Sounds good.
And we're back. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Morning. Good morning, Scott Schewel of Safe Harbor. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Pat, and I hope you guys survived the night okay.
We did. We had a skunk visitor. We had bicycles through here at about 2:30, which I figure was people riding home from working at the warehouses.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very nice, very quiet, very calm, very hot.
Yes.
I'm just glad I woke up, and this is not a complaint, but it's just a fact. I woke up, I'm hot, I'm dirty, I'm sweaty, I'm sure I'm stinky. I'm trying to stay away from people. And what if I was having to go to work and this was just another night of my life, sleeping outside in inclement weather with no options, So Scott, we were talking off air about how in the course of your institution's tenure, I believe in the country, certainly dates back to the Mitch Snyder days when Mitch Snyder was starving himself in front of the White House to try and get people to pay attention to the problem of homelessness in the 80s. The George family and other people, George Flowers family, the other people got together and said, we got to get these families a place to live. And now, how many years is it? 30-something years later, you're still at it.
34 plus years.
So tell us a little bit of what Safe Harbor is doing now.
We've had to evolve since Safe Harbor was first formed 34 plus years ago. I mean, initially it was transitional housing or bridge housing, and that program no longer exists. They just don't provide any funding for that kind of long-term shelter opportunity anymore. So we are a hybrid of emergency shelter services and permanent housing options. So the emergency shelter focuses on really calming the chaos in someone's lives, giving them the opportunity to get ready for that next step, hopefully to move on to permanent housing, affordable housing. And so we have a 90-day shelter program, which of course is running a lot longer than that. And then we have the 1-year long-term temporary housing program, which is also running longer. And the reason it's running longer is there's nowhere for them to progress to right now. And our policy as an organization is we provide shelter, we don't take it away. And so if you're here, if you're doing what we ask of you to do, you're participating in the program and you're working to get towards that permanent housing, we're not going to ask you to leave just because of some time frame. So that's about 25 units in our main facility. And then the rest of our units right now, 28 units, are permanent housing between low-income housing. We have units which are strictly low-income, $300 a month. You get a room, refrigerator, microwave, bathroom, room. I challenge you to find anywhere in Cumberland County where you can find that. Nowhere else, I believe, that you can find that kind of low-income housing available. And then we have rapid rehousing. We work with the Cumberland County Housing and Redevelopment Authority on their rapid rehousing program. We have a permanent supportive housing program that is a partnership with Cumberland County. And then we have apartments that are geared towards and focused on Section 8 housing to provide for those people who have those vouchers and who need that housing. And so we've had to adjust to go where the funding is.
Just to stop people from driving you crazy, calling about those $300 rooms. They're just for single individuals, right?
They are, and they are full, and they are perpetually full. I mean, I've been here 8.5 years. We've been perpetually at capacity. Someone leaves as long as we don't need to do any repairs to the facility where they were living, we can turn it around in less than a day. The need continues to be so great. The last numbers I had on the HUD coordinated entry list for Cumberland County, there were over 160 households on that list waiting for housing services. So the need continues to be strong.
Bother to get on the list or qualify for the list. It's interesting too, though. You and Community Cares work hand in glove also.
Absolutely.
Where you guys cooperate so well that when someone is in emergency shelter, they're sleeping on the floor, And your first phone call is to them to say, hey, we've got a room. And they're like, well, don't you worry about a thing.
Absolutely. They are one of our very best friends and strongest community partners. Probably more than 80% of the folks who are with us have started there. And so it is absolutely a continuum of services. They'll start at CARES and then they'll come to us, and then hopefully we're able to get them to permanent housing. Beth and I talk frequently. In fact, there are probably some weeks where we talk more than we see each other's families. So it is a very good and strong partnership.
Right. Right. Now, one of the things that I'm concerned about, and we've had a couple of interviews on the webcast so far, is I'm concerned about this, and I'm sure you are. I mean, like you said off air, everybody's got the same concerns right now. So we're just going to go over them again.
Sure.
We've got the now coined phrase tsunami of evictions coming up. And that's going to, you're at capacity, you've been at capacity for probably more than 8.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Been at capacity forever. And now the problem's going to get worse.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really a multifaceted problem, because obviously the first thing you have is people who don't have the money to pay their rent or their mortgage. And then when this moratorium ends, it doesn't mean they suddenly now are back to work or have the funds to pay that. And at that point, where are they going to get that lump sum to pay such a large, we're talking 6 months or more of rent and or mortgage at some level they haven't paid. So there's going to have to be some sort of relief program. And unfortunately, you and I both know the phrase, we're from the government, we're here to help, isn't exactly a positive phrase, but if there's going to have to be some,
they let us run the place.
It could be. And in this case, it has to be, because there's going to have to be some legislative solution to helping people, give them the time to either pay back the funds over a reasonable period of time or give them some funds to help them, because it's just too big. It's going to be too big of a debt otherwise. And the other facet to this, and I think Angela from Family Promise mentioned this when she was on earlier, landlords aren't the devil. We've had a lot of landlords who are working with us and trying to give folks who need housing, that housing, and taking Section 8 and working with those who are in need. But they also have to pay their bills, and they also have to feed their families. And so we need to be respectful of helping them be able to continue their business as well, while not penalizing those who unfortunately have been severely affected by the virus. So there are multi levels to it, but if nothing is done, it's going to be a huge crisis, and it's going to strain every one of us in social services.
So I have another question based on that I've been working on pretty much for the last 3 weeks or so, because I'm trying to write a story for a newspaper about it. And, when I write pieces, I can usually cheat a little bit and do a whole pile of web searching and find a different reporter that did half of my work for me, verify it, and, go from there. There's nobody talking about this issue, and it concerns me greatly. And so you may not have an answer yet. That's totally cool. But we'll follow up and get it. I just want to put it out there. And that's that when, say, 20 million people are evicted in September or October, or mounting into November, where do they vote? And we already have a problem of non-traditionally housed people having a certain challenge voting. So one of our interviews that ran last night with a woman named Bethany that everybody should watch, she was phenomenal. She's the registrar of voters for Cumberland County. She said that right now, at least in Pennsylvania, you can't say I live in the park, which is kind of the theme of this whole webcast is, living in the park. But you can't say I live in the park and vote. You have to be attached to a building. And right now, there are only 2 buildings where non-traditionally housed people can be attached and still vote in Cumberland, in Carlisle. And that's Safe Harbor or Community Cares. And there are a lot of homeless people who are not attached to either of your 2 institutions. And so what she said was they don't have to live there to be able to get their absentee ballot mailed there or to be able to use your building as a registration place. So my question to you that you don't need to answer today is, but maybe we can work together and get the word out, is how can we get a message, and maybe you're already doing it, out to the non-traditionally housed people that there are ways that they can register to vote attached to a building, which is what, and maybe it also could be the AMVETS Hall, it could be the Eagles, it needs to be a structure, which is really probably the ultimate irony of homelessness.
Well, and there's another level that I'll bring up then too. But first off, we'd be more than happy to work with anybody to try to come up with a program to give them the opportunity to use the address so that they can vote. I mean, obviously, voting is the key constitutional right that everybody should make use of. And if they don't, then we're letting society down. So if there's a way we can help with that, we certainly want to. The other issue is, during this pandemic, and it's become obviously a hot button issue nationally, is voting by mail. Well, if they don't have a PO box, if they don't have anywhere to get mail, now if suddenly everything is vote by mail, now you have even a bigger issue, because there's no way to get them a ballot that would count that they could vote by mail. So that's going to be an issue as well.
Right, that's what we're going to need. We're going to need a location that would accept their mail for them. I mean, even if they register and they're going to go into a polling place, once they register, they can't have registered without a building. And then in Pennsylvania, they mail you your voting card.
Right.
And the first time you vote in Pennsylvania, you have to show ID, which I have personally a constitutional problem with. But so these are real obstacles to these folks. And so right now with you and Beth over at Community Cares being the absolute only place, and this is Cumberland County, that includes Shippensburg, that includes Mechanicsburg. You guys are the only places. And so that's a huge issue we have to tackle to make sure people, especially if another 8,000 or 10,000 people lose their homes between now and November 3rd.
Yes.
We've got to get them a way that they can register. So
Absolutely.
That's great. And, maybe we can have a Zoom call later on when we all take a nap and figure this out.
Sounds like a plan.
So what do you folks need? Well, that's I haven't done enough of that on these phone calls of finding out what the community can do to help you. But maybe somebody's got a mother-in-law apartment that they aren't renting right now. Can they contact you and say, because obviously once you put a person out to find a place to live, you've gotten to know them for a year. Mm-hmm. So someone who has a mother-in-law apartment they're not using anymore, if they give you a call and say, I want to make a few extra bucks and I want to help somebody get a home. What can the community do to help you help people?
Well, sure. Certainly anybody who has availability and that they're looking to rent to those who are, in the lower income strata, if they let us know, we can certainly have folks who are looking for their own place and go that way. And you've hit upon it, and that is affordable housing. We know quite clearly homelessness started to become an issue in the late 70s, early 80s, because the federal government stopped building affordable housing and supporting affordable housing, and it hasn't come back since. We again, following the policies, following the funding, we at Safe Harbor are working on trying to put together an affordable housing community at the Smith Farm property out near the new Carlisle United Methodist Church. But even though we're working on it on a daily basis, we're going to require tax credit funding and a bunch of other funding to come through. We're still 2 years, most likely, from shoveling the ground, and then another year for construction before we even can build the 47 units that we're looking to build. So affordable housing at every level drives the homelessness issue for sure. And it's going to get even worse, as we talked about, with the eviction tsunami that we think is coming. So if someone has housing that they're willing to, they're not looking for market rate, or they're willing to take Section 8, that's you and I know both that Section 8 landlords who will accept Section 8 and work with folks who have the Section 8 funding, there aren't as many of them as we need. And that's why we at Safe Harbor, that's our focus. We know that. So we need that as well. So that's one way. Certainly, the other way for us, as every other nonprofit in the housing business that you've had on over the last 24 hours, it's funding from the private sector. It's the donations we get from the community. Since your time at Safe Harbor and over the last 8.5 years, private funding, donations, grants, fundraising for events is now 38% of our overall budget. It was 25% 8.5 years ago. And that's because government funding is not increasing. In fact, it's decreasing on certain levels. And then you have what they call level funding, which we know isn't because of inflationary cost increases. So if they are able to contribute in some way, you know as well as I do, the $10 checks are just as important as the $50 checks and the other checks. And so those are helpful. But we also the in-kind donations of personal care items and linens, towels, sheets, pillows, pillowcases, those kind of things, as well as non-perishable food items. We can use all those on a daily basis as well. And so those are the kind of things. Volunteering has been important to us. Unfortunately, in the era of COVID, we have to be a little bit more careful in terms of volunteers, clearing them and making sure not only do they have their legal clearances, but their health clearances now. But we still do have a need for volunteers as well. And so those are all the things. I will say Carlisle and Cumberland County, it's a very, very generous, supportive community. We have so many wonderful friends who support not only Safe Harbor, but CARES and all the other organizations, Family Promise, who we work with, and all those folks. And so we do have a significant number of very strong supporters who help us, and we're very thankful for that. So it's again, affordable housing and shelter. That's the other thing. We've talked about shelter, but government funding for just strictly emergency shelter has been declining precipitously over the last probably 7 years. There's no longer any transitional housing funding. Emergency shelter funding for Safe Harbor, prior to 3 years ago, we were getting anywhere from $125,000 to $200,000 in a 2-year cycle from the Emergency Solutions Grant. In the last 3 years, we've gotten just over $30,000 a year. So it's really precipitously dropped. And so we've made that up. We've made it up with private donations. We've made it up with the rents that we charge for the housing, the permanent housing. But that's a model we can't sustain for a long term. So the government has to realize that emergency shelter is still important for those people who are becoming homeless, either for the first time or the second time. It's there to calm the chaos, to give them a stable foundation and get them ready to get to that next level. But if you don't have that first level, you're going to be in a lot of trouble very quickly.
Yeah. Talk to your congressman, your state senator, your state rep, and tell them that investing in Main Street, not Wall Street at this point, is really what we need. Because you're right. I mean, there's not a lot of government money going out, our money, our grandchildren's money. And we need it for the average local Joe right now, really bad. And Jane. Hey, Scott, always a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to bring us up to date on what you guys are doing, and best of luck moving forward.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for what you're doing to raise awareness. Everybody who raises awareness about this issue, it's important. And so, you and I have worked together on a lot of things, and we'll continue to. It's all about the partnerships and working together to raise awareness about this.
And Beth texted, so Beth's watching, and she said that through the Community Cares outreach, they have street outreach right now. They also are registering and getting people who can use that address as a way to vote. So that's good news too. So we're going to pull this all together, and then we just got to get the word out.
Absolutely.
Just get the word out.
Let us know how we can help.
Scott.
Thanks, Pat. Have a great day.
Great. Have a good day.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.